you so much for tuning in and thank you for staying with us always Monday through Friday here on Global Television. We're live in the nation's capital, Abuja. So on today's edition. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program again to Midday Discourse on Global Television. I am Samuel Odi, and today's edition will be looking at State of the Nation, where we'll be exploring good governance and the role of credible electoral process. You know, in the wake of the election coming up soon, shortly in Edo, and in Edo State, which is going to be the governorship election, the chairman of INEC has come out and then urged security agencies to be vigilant during these processes so as to have a free and fair election. So looking at those angles now, everybody has a role to play. We've had a whole lot of voters registered and as well as voters card collected, but INEC on the other hand are saying there are whole lots of over 2,000 voters cards which is still yet to be collected. So all of these angles now will be looked into, and then why are people not getting their voters card when they always demand for good governance? The only way you can get good governance and appoint or get a leader for your own self of your own choosing, it's when you go get your voters card, get registered, and then vote for who you want to, so you would have the right to like persecute or go after the person you voted for if he or she is not living up to the his or her manifestos that they've promised. So on today's edition of the program, we'll be extraying the role of credible election in terms of having good governance. But before we get into the conversation deeply, we'll be going on a quick break, and then when I come back, I'll be introducing my guest who would help us extray and then look at all of these angles. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, this is Global Television, and I am Samuel Odi. This is Midday Discourse, where we'll be having a conversation on the role of credible electoral process. I have with me in the studio someone who is a seasoned journalist and as well as a public affairs analyst, Mr. James Ezema. Thank you so much for joining us on today's edition of the program.
Thank you very much.
Yes, to let you know, he's the advocate, national president advocate for Not Too Young to perform organization. So what is your reaction, Mr. Eze, to the statement by the INEC chairman, urging security operatives to be very vigilant coming, for the next coming election?
Well, looking at INEC generally, you will discover that what we should be asking ourselves is what is the confidence level of the electorate as far as INEC itself is concerned? Not only just the issue of the security issues. We have security challenges, but more than the security challenges is the confidence of Nigeria in INEC itself carrying out an electoral process that people can trust, owing to what has happened in the past. So INEC making a statement as regards security or things like that, you will discover that that is not the place where people are much more concerned about. You know, people are not much more concerned about the
security aspect.
Yeah, the security aspect more than the credibility of the election. But it is all good and fine that we should be dealing with the issue of security, because security generally in Nigeria is a big issue, is of a big challenge, and the call, yes, is assuming the confidence level of the people on INEC is something to go by. That is the right thing to do.
Okay, so the INEC now, you're saying the INEC need to like make sure they have their confidence in people gain confidence from them first before, you know, them calling on other agencies to, you know, get themselves together.
Exactly. Okay. You know, you see, that's why some 2023 actually provided an opportunity for all Nigerians to come together and believe in election. Because before now, election apathy has become the order of the day as far as our election is concerned. But in 2023, we saw people come out in their numbers during the continuous registration exercise to register to vote. Some people who have never voted before came out to register to vote. And that tells you that there was this kind of energy towards electoral participation.
Yes.
But most people got disappointed at the end of the election because of how some of the electoral outcome, you know, in some places, what became the outcome of those electoral processes in some places. So,
to fairness to INEC, they said they had the beavers failed, okay, which is something we've almost had during all elections. So now, let's just give benefit of the doubt that yes, beavers failed, machine fails, and then we can't help but if machine fail, there's nothing, it's technical, so there's nothing that can be done. So what can be done now? What's the contingency plan now in place of technical issues? That means what can they do ahead of time? Can they have maybe 2 beavers or something? What do you think can be done?
I think this is an off-cycle election.
Yes.
It's unlike the general election that you can say that INEC will be stretched in terms of the deployment of human materials and other electoral materials. But the thing is that I don't think the issue is about the failure of the technology. I think what is the issue is the failure of the human person, the individual persons that are in charge of those technology to make them work or make contingency plans so that at the end of the day, if there is a glitch, what do I do? So you don't just this is a computer age. This is an ICT age. It's not the age that you say because there's a glitch, then you are just allowed the system to collapse because the one glitch or the other took place. You should anticipate such glitches, you know, in an election. So INEC in itself is the one that can answer that question as per what will happen if there is a glitch, as they called it in 2023 elections. So we shouldn't kind of be, you know, too much of place too much emphasis on the beavers itself, because it is not the beavers that is always our problem. It is the human beings that operate those beavers. It is the INEC itself that is the regulator of the electoral process that is always the issue. So if INEC in itself can decide and say, let us turn a new leaf, then we will see it after these elections in the election coming in Edo and Ondo State, particularly.
Respectively, yeah. So, that means that it doesn't just boil down to the equipment itself, it boils down to the person. So now let's look at the angle. Since we're talking about transparency now, let's talk about transparency and accountability of, INEC themselves, because they are like the mother to bet this, to be part of bet good governance. But before we get to that aspect, what factors now does the people of these states particularly now need to play to be able to see all of this happen?
I think particularly the civil society in some of these states should kind of come up with some programs to educate the people, and also to try to raise awareness, and also try to ensure that officials of INEC that will be deployed in those states are held to account for their for whatever they are going to do during the election. And the election itself is not only an INEC affair.
Yes.
Everybody is involved. But the why people always talk about INEC is because they are the ones that they are the umpire. They're the one that decide. It's just like a referee in a football match. Yeah. If a referee in a football match enters the field and obviously blows the whistle against one of the teams, and the people are seeing that is just favoring one of the team, it becomes a problem. So it leads to riotous acts among the fans and all the things like that. So what we should do as citizens in these states is to ensure that we do our own part. Let us participate, irrespective of the fact that INEC has failed in the past. Probably this time they will do well. And if you didn't participate, you cannot say that INEC did not do well, because you first of all have to participate before you can now criticize INEC for not doing what it's supposed to do.
Yes, before you start criticizing INEC, go get your voter's card, then go vote before you start criticizing INEC. Before we get into deep and other aspects of this conversation, we'll be going on a quick break, and then when we come back, Midday Discuss continues. Yes, many thanks for staying with us if you're just joining. This is Midday Discourse, and then we're having conversations in the areas of getting good governance and the role of credible election. So everybody has a part to play. You as a citizen, the security agencies, INEC officials, and the country at large. Everybody has one role or the other to play. Most of the times, a lot of persons complain that yes, the person that they voted for wasn't the person that emerged as a winner, and sometimes some persons don't turn out and still complain about bad governance. So, what role can people play now in terms of ensuring that they actually come out and then vote, and then because it's obviously their right?
Yeah. I think precisely in an election, there are rules for each and every stakeholder in that election. And I think in this case, the individual citizens should ensure that they play their part. You see, one of the reasons why elections are rigged is because of low participation. Most times, low participation leads to election rigging because it opens the door for election riggers to now manipulate because people were not there, so they can now do and compute their results the way they like it. So, but on a general note, the citizens in some of these elections that are coming should try as much as possible to do their part. Let them play their part. We'll work towards how we hold INEC and the officials responsible for whatever the outcome becomes. But one thing that people should know is that INEC have always done well when it comes to off-cycle election. Okay. Where we always had issues with INEC is a general election. But when it comes to off-cycle election, most of the time you see that most off-cycle election conducted by INEC, to be fair to them, there have not been litigations
and then having courts back-to-back court issues.
Most of those cases. I've not seen an off-cycle election conducted by INEC that had the election nullified. I have not seen. So it now tells us that there's more to it because INEC, it seems that they need a kind of better funding to be able to recruit more staff. Because during off-cycle election, you know that both security agencies, they are mobilized in their numbers. The INEC officials, they are mobilized in numbers. In some states, you will see that 2 or 3 or 4 commissioners from INEC will be in that state to ensure everything worked the way it was planned. So I think manpower too is one of the issues that we should think about.
Do you think that during the general elections that INEC gets overwhelmed with handling the whole 36 states of the Federation?
It is possible. It is possible because if you look at it, why is it that off-cycle elections come out people with less complaints by the citizens?
Yes.
But when it comes to general elections, you will discover that there will be all kinds of excuses by the electoral umpire why they were not able to do the things they were supposed to do. So I think manpower too should be something that anybody that believes in free, fair, and credible election should be thinking about how to advocate for better funding for INEC. Once we have the human elements in the commission, in order, then we can now find a way of trying to hold them accountable because the electoral process is still in such a way that up till now we don't have a clear legislation in terms of electronic transmission of results. So those are the things that we should be advocating. But mainly at this moment, we should be looking at INEC before 2027 election, whether there is need to reinforce INEC in terms of recruitment of more staff so that they can be able to conduct a better election.
Do you think we should always have a general election, or given the fact that we have 36 states of the Federation, right? So we are having an off-cycle election that will be happening it's around the corner. It's here already. So do you think we should apply the same to our general elections?
It is something that should be experimented because you know, when we are holding elections in Nigeria, during the general elections, you see that even the security agencies, they are overstretched most of the time. So they have this ability to cover up the areas that the elections are taking place is always an issue for most of them. So what we are going to, what you are talking about is I think that is what should be experimented in such a way that since there is an ample time within which we can conduct the election, so the INEC should segment the election.
But don't you think
whether it's conducted in zone by zone? But the problem we have is that, you know, on the days of election, we usually shut down the economy. And that is a big problem. Okay. So why should we now shut down the economy because people are going to vote? It's also an issue that we have to look at and see how we can, you know, move from this manual voting to electronic voting, so that people can be voting and nobody will be, you know, the economic activities will not be halted because election is taking place, so that we know that it is some categories of individuals who will now come out to vote. In, like, I think in South Africa, when they did their voting, I learned that some people voted virtually. After the voting, some other people who could not vote virtually now came to polling units to vote. And that is something also we should look at, how we experiment. But it's still in the human element that we
are still talking about. Yeah, don't you think 4 years is enough time for INEC to get whatever they need ready to be able to conduct a general election?
It's 4 years. It's not just 4 years. A month for, if INEC is particularly serious and committed
independent
and truly independent, and not influenced by the political elites. You know, INEC, 1 month is enough for INEC to get prepared. What are they preparing? What are they getting set? Is it not to print ballot papers and then deploy the staff that will go and both the ad hoc staff and the other permanent staff that will go to conduct the election? So I don't see anything that we make INEC to stay for to take a year to prepare for election and not deliver. Within a month, INEC can prepare for election and deliver, because this is what you have been doing over the years. So what is it that is new that you are going to do that will require that you have a 4-year period and you cannot still deliver on the election? So whatever you need to get, you within the first year you have started preparing for the next election. So what you do, you can, you know, bring include in the budget segment by segment, depending on the things that are needed most at the particular time, so that you can prepare on time. Because most of the time you see that the election year is when you will be hearing INEC budget, and they will be saying, oh, they are cutting the budget. The other people are saying they should increase the budget. Why not within the 4 years you are preparing for the election? You know what you need for the particular election. As 2027 is coming in, when they are doing carrying out the budgeting process for the for next year, you begin to prepare for the election. Bring whatever budget that you require for ahead of the election. You start getting some things until only the ones that you must do at that particular election year, because you know the way our budget also run, that after money has been allocated for a particular thing, and if it's not carried out during the budget year, that they will now say that the budget has elapsed and all that. So you have to know what is it that you need now. Like things like beavers, you don't need to wait until the election year to buy the beavers. Yes. So you can purchase the beavers, start doing your configuration, start doing your test runs, and do all those before, even 2 years before election. So I don't understand. It's just this human element that we keep on talking about, because there's nothing so special about what they are doing that at the end of the day you will not be able to deliver a credible election.
Okay, let's look at the aspect of the candidates now, and then how key their role is going to be in terms during election. You know, most of the time the candidates go about and then, you know, spiking people and then making them get violent. So how key is it going to be for these electoral candidates now to, you know, make sure that they also play their part in ensuring that they have a free and a credible election?
You see, that's what I was saying, that election is everybody's business. All the stakeholders have a role to play. But, you know, the candidates themselves should be able to know that after the election, there will still be a state. There will still be a country. So, and if you incite people because you want to win election by all means, you know, especially dishing out fake information and unverified tales against your just to undermine your opponent. At the end of the day, you discover that there will still be election, a country or a state after that election. So you know, the desperation of the politicians too is an issue, because most times, even when the INEC officials do not want to do some things, you discover that some of the we have had stories where INEC officials are held hostage by politicians and their thugs, insisting that they must do things in a certain way. So these are the things that we should also look at, and then try, in order to deal with some of these issues, we should enact law for electoral courts. If there is an electoral court,
not just like the usual judicial system.
Yes, so that, because this thing has become a problem. But if we have electoral courts, then we know that there are people responsible who will prosecute electoral offenders. You know, people were arrested in 2023 during the 2023 election. Yes. Up to today, I have not seen where anybody was prosecuted. And then you will now begin to wonder, what is the essence of arresting somebody when there is no intention to prosecute? Because it's the prosecution that you will give, you know, will serve as deterrence to others. If nobody is being prosecuted for electoral offenses, so why are we arresting anybody? We should allow people to just continue to move. So that's why there is need for us to have electoral courts, just as people have advocated for anti-corruption courts, that so that we'll be able, a special court, so to say, that will try some of these cases, so that the people that are found wanting will be prosecuted diligently and on time too, so that at the end of the day, others will learn and know that, look, this, because we can't have a country where the rule of law is not upheld.
Yeah. Do you think our judicial system now is overwhelmed? That's why you're suggesting there should be an electoral court?
The judicial, I don't even think that the judiciary is the major problem here. I think it's the prosecuting authorities that they are the major problem. Because if the judiciary is the problem, in which court have anybody been arraigned? And then the judiciary did not carry on their own side of the bargain. So I think the thing is that we have the issues with people who will even prosecute election offenders. Because INEC sometimes will tell you it is not within their jurisdiction. Then if it is the police, or how will you hold the police accountable if they decide not to prosecute? So these are some of the areas that we think that the laws, you know, have to be tinkered with, so that we will be able to have clear-cut decisions to make at a particular point in time, and we have people to hold responsible. If an electoral offender was not prosecuted, we can say it is XYZ, because INEC will be claiming that they don't have prosecution powers. They don't have powers to prosecute anybody. Then if you as a regulator, you're a regulator, and you are an umpire that conduct an election, and if you don't have the power to prosecute, then there's a problem. There will be a problem.
Okay, you know, there's been a cry for constitution amendments and all over the country, and then it's no longer news. We had patriots who visited just last week, who visited Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in line with that. So, do you think if this should happen now, the constitution should be looked into? Do you think they should give the INEC some leverage, some power to be able to, you know, prosecute those election offenders?
Yeah, if INEC is not given the powers to prosecute by law, there should be a law that states clearly who should prosecute election offenders.
So we'll have someone
so that
to
we
hold.
can know that, okay, this particular agency, security agency, or if it is civil defense, for instance,
Yes.
that will be prosecuting election offenders, we know that it is the responsibility of civil defense to prosecute. If it is the DSS, we know that it is the responsibility of the DSS to prosecute. If it is the police, we should know that it is the police's responsibility to prosecute, so that if nobody is being prosecuted, we will know where to go, we will know who to hold.
But don't you think it
accountable.
should be the job of the police to handle something like that?
You see, the police in itself, they have a whole lot that they are doing, and when something is not squarely placed on their doorstep,
Yes.
you know, and then you know things that has to do with elections. There are a lot of influences here and there. So some politicians, some big wigs, who have interest when somebody has been arrested, they will not even want a prosecution to take place in the first place.
So
because they work in their interest,
Yes.
so they will not want anybody to be prosecuted. But if we have people that we can say, yes, these are the places we can lay hand and say, where are the people that were arrested? We can be able to say we have people to hold to account that the offenders were not prosecuted.
Okay, if you had to recommend now, which of the agencies, army, police, or DSS should, you know, be the ones frontlining this?
It's more of a civil issue. We can look at some of these other paramilitary, so that the police, yes, like the civil defense, you know, some of these paramilitary, and then there are some of these people that are agitating for some other security organizations.
Yes.
They can be made to fall into prosecuting this kind of election offenders, so that at the end of the day, let us have a clear-cut, you know, institution that will say that this institution is the one that is responsible for prosecuting election offenders. So at the end of the day, Nigerians can now say that they are having people they can hold accountable if anybody was not prosecuted. Because as it is today, you don't know whether it is the police or the army or the civil defense or the DSS that you hold, because each one, or even the EFCC, because they all of them carry out arrests during elections.
Yes.
You see EFCC arresting some people for vote buying, you know, offenses.
Yes.
So, and then you discover that at the end of the day, nobody is prosecuted. And then the worst of it is that you discover that some of these security operatives will be injured in the line of duty during those elections, and at the end of the day, nobody will be prosecuted. You also dampen their morale in terms of you know,
making sure we have credible elections.
That we have credible elections. So we should not allow this kind of situation to continue to remain.
You know, we actually made mention of coming back and having conversation about transparency and accountability. Yeah. So now this now has to start not just from the INEC chairman himself, but from individuals at the polling unit. So how key is it going to be that the individuals now handling the beavers and calling out people's names to go vote? How key is their role to enabling credible election?
You see, some of these officials, you know, I have seen some of them that stood their ground. No matter what people said or did, no matter the threat.
We saw it in the 2023 election.
They said, no, we are not going to alter this result.
Yes. And
that is patriotism. That is what we are talking about. But how many people will be able to resist? Some people will, at gunpoint, still resisted. So these are the things that we are talking about. That the human beings, the human element is the thing that we should be more worried about. We as Nigerians, because there's people that are being appointed in INEC, they are all Nigerians, they are all human beings. So if the human element in the election is taken care of, in the sense that we remember that we have a country, and it's through good electoral processes that are transparent and credible that we can have good governance. You cannot be talking about good governance when the people are not the ones that elect their leaders. Because the people who, like in cases where people go and buy votes, and at the end of the day they pay their way through and they are declared as winners of election. So there's no way they can be subject to the electorate. They cannot be subject to the people, and the sovereignty belongs to the people. So you cannot, the people cannot hold them to account, because they know that after all, you did not vote for me, and tomorrow you will not even vote for me, and I will still be here. So in other words, they don't need the electorate. But when the electorate can now decide who they want, you know, one of the ironies of our system is that it seems that some of the politicians that we have today, most of them want a situation whereby they will be the one to decide for us who will represent us. They are the people to decide for us which policy that should be executed. They are the ones to decide for us which program they are going to carry out. No, these are not, it's not their responsibility. It is the electorate that should tell you that, look, this is what we want. You cannot come and say, oh, you, because like the issue of subsidy that was causing issues. You know, can we get that thing subjected to a referendum and say, okay, the people, what do you want? Most times the people talk about the subsidy is people are not talking about the subsidy as if subsidizing is a crime. There's no country that there is no subsidy. There's no country that you will go today that you will say that there is no subsidy in one area or the other. Some of these countries, they subsidize their energy, especially places like China. They subsidize the energy, and most of people in Europe, you see everybody, they go to China to produce because energy is cheaper. It's cheaper. In some other European countries, you see them, they subsidize agriculture. Food is not an issue for anybody. Nobody can be talking about food like we are having here, where people are protesting about hunger. You know, in those kind of climb, they will be looking at us as in, what is the problem with these people? How can somebody be protesting because of hunger? Because they subsidize agriculture in those areas. Then in our own case, we have the petrol, which was the only subsidy that was remaining, because kerosene subsidy had been removed. The diesel had been removed. Now it's only petrol. And now this petrol is, most of the cars that run, the commercial vehicles, they use petrol. And then you are now talking about corruption as the reason why you should not subsidize the petrol. And then some people are talking about smuggling too, you know, and I will laugh. How can a government be talking about smuggling, that smuggling is the reason why you will punish your own people? How can you punish your own people because people are smuggling? What is the essence of government? The essence of government is to ensure security, is to ensure there is order. So what it is, if it is then a failure of government for you to say that because somebody is smuggling a product from Nigeria, it's just like in the US, they will now tell you that why we don't want to subsidize agriculture anymore any longer is because smugglers are taking agricultural produce to neighboring Mexico or to any other country. You know, that it does not sound logical in any way. So these are the things that we are talking about, and that is the issues that we should be dealing with.
Yeah, so we'll be going on a very quick break, and then when we return back, Midday Discourse continues. Yes, many thanks for staying with us. If you're just joining, you're not late, but you're a little late. Yes, we've been having a very interesting conversation with Mr. James Ezema, the national president for Not Too Young to Perform group. So today we've been actually having a conversation about good governance and credible election, but now we're going to look at the angle and the role of international observers. So Mr. Eze, what role does international observers play now in line with having, having people, countries, states have credible election?
International observation for elections, there is a universal, more or less like a universal process, principle. We have we see United Nations observers in the elections in different countries.
Yes.
So we have AU election observers in different countries. We have ECOWAS election observers in different places.
Yes.
So the thing is that most of these observers will actually observe and make their reports.
Yes.
But sometimes their reports are politicized. If because the reports of the election observers did not favor a particular political party that may have perpetrated a kind of fraud during the election, they will start discrediting that electoral observer organization. And that is a big issue for us. It still boils down to the human beings that participate in our elections. We should try to begin to know that, there will be a country after the election.
Do you think that the international observers now gets influenced by the political candidates?
Most times they don't.
Okay.
Most times they don't, and that's why you see that some of the observers, when they release their reports, some candidates will kick against it. They tend to demarcate that particular observer mission. But in all, we should also know that by the time you demarcate them today, and tomorrow probably another political party that is contending against you in the next election does the same thing that you did to obtain your own victory. At the end of the day, the same people will now come and give their report, which this time will favor you. But because you have discredited them, nobody will take their report serious. So that is the problem. So we should be even in our election, the judgments that the courts deliver.
Yes.
Discover that most times when they deliver their judgment, the thing sets precedent for the next election. And because Party A was favored, and because the Party A had some elements within the judicial system that helped them to obtain the judgment, at the end of the day, when another political party comes, you discover that what the judgment that was read by the court has become the law. So you yourself will be there to blame yourself, because that same law will be used against you.
Yes.
So these are the things. So election observers are not the problem most of the time, because they will usually do their job. But it is the people, the politicians, because they will say that anything a politician touch, he corrupts, including election observer reports, So we should be thinking about us as citizens. Let's know that there is life after the election. We will continue to, like people that play football.
Yeah.
You cannot say because you lost today, you will not play tomorrow.
Yes.
When you lose, you go and prepare and come back, and you will do well. In the next election. Let us talk about how we did in the Olympics.
Well, we'll be having that conversation of how we did in the Olympics, but not today. Not today. But there will always be room for the athletes that went back to get themselves better, and as well as go at least win us a few medals. But looking at it, it's some Nigerians that didn't represent Nigerians one medal. So I think it's still a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, Nigerians, you see, that's still the thing that we're talking about, good governance.
Yes.
Because so much money was spent to prepare.
9 billion.
Yes, but we got little or nothing.
Yes.
Now, but you have citizens who were before, playing for Nigeria or aspiring to play for Nigeria,
Yes.
or to participate in some of these games as Nigerians.
Yes.
But because our system scared them away, because of the way we do our things scared them away, they decided to nationalize in another country, and we see them. Some of them will play against us in football matches, and they will defeat us, and their country will carry the day.
Well, that's how much time will permit us to, take on today's edition of the program Midday Discourse. And for citizens, please, after the election, like he rightly mentioned, there is still a state that your neighbor is still your neighbor. So as the curtains draws closer for this Edo election and Ondo election, I would say if you're in any of the states as we speak, you've not gotten your voter's card, go get it and then vote for who you feel is right to be the leader. My name is Samuel Odi, and on this note, I want to say thank you so much to Mr. James Ezema, the National President of Not Too Young to Perform in Nigeria. So that's how much time will permit us to take on to this edition of the program. I'll see you again tomorrow. Bye for now.